Jordan Belfort, thank you very much for joining us. Wanted to ask you your thoughts on the GameStop situation. It looks like the biggest story in financial markets right now.
Oh, I think it's still an evolving story for sure, but it's a huge story here. I think it's all over the world. And I think what is making it such a big story is not so much the amounts of money involved, but what it represents. And that's the little guy actually fighting back against the larger institutions and winning, at least for now. I think it's a pretty incredible thing. The stock is down substantially off its highs, but still that doesn't, change the fact that they got the little investor gave the big hedge funds a run for their money.
Yeah, you've just released a pretty funny parody video sort of getting behind the GameStop investors. Why are you really backing them in this?
Well, I think it's great. I mean, what they did in terms of, I think it's shocking to me more than anything that it was even possible. I think it shows the power of the convergence of a few things at once. You have the power of social media and things spreading virally. You have the power of these actual message boards and real-time communication, and also the power of the phone, the app that allows them to trade and act on that in real time. It's those things together that have really closed the gap in the ability of individuals to almost act as a group in the same way that Wall Street or hedge funds are, taking lots of money from lots of people and acting as a group, so-called, so one person is. So I think it's amazing that they were able to do that. Of course, I've also said, be careful because, there's going to be a lot of blood on the floor when it's all over. It's like catching a falling knife when these stocks start to collapse. So you have to be very careful on both sides here.
You mentioned this is a real great story of the little guy against the big guy. Do you think hedge funds have too much power at the moment?
Well, I think that all hedge funds are not created equal. I think there are certain hedge funds that are really pushing the envelope and breaking the law, and I think those are the ones that need to be reined in and or shut down. And while there's many hedge funds that are serving a normal purpose in the market, they're trading, they're being intelligent about it. So I wouldn't paint all hedge funds in a negative light, but there are a lot of them out there that are definitely, making it so it's not a level playing field for the smaller investor.
What do you think the reaction was in the boardroom of Melvin Capital when they started seeing the GameStop shares just skyrocketing a couple of weeks ago?
So I actually know, there's two main firms, and I know one of the people that runs it personally. He's not a great friend, but I know him personally. We spoke, and usually a very amicable guy who will talk to you at length. When I called him up, what do you want? He was not a happy camper. What? I just lost $1 zillion. They were not happy, by the way. So I think they were in utter shock at the speed and the ferocity of the short squeeze.
And you yourself, as the Wolf of Wall Street, do you think in some way you may have inspired these GameStop investors in their sort of crusade against the big hedge funds here?
Interestingly, Stratton, in some level, was like a Reddit thread where it was like a lot of us got behind the thinly traded stock. But the difference is, one thing I will tell you, if you really dig into that Reddit group, a lot of them are not even in this to make money. There's a social justice aspect to this whole thing where I wouldn't say it's all of them, but there's many of these people are just so fed up with institutions in general, not just Wall Street. It's politics, Wall Street. It's like almost a populist revolt against an institution. So I think there are some similarities, but also these people have a mission. I think that's the dangerous part also, because sometimes if that's the case, people won't be acting as intelligently as they normally would with their money. So I urge people, if you're doing this, just put in what you can afford to lose. Don't put your life savings into this, to prove a point. That would be my advice.
And you mentioned Stratton. At Stratton Oakmont, you were sort of pumping and dumping, inflating the prices of stocks. Do you think those excesses or those behaviours, are they returning to the market today?
I don't think they really ever left. I mean, I think that there was a blip in 2008 for a couple of years there where the excesses were definitely toned down. And I think the years after that, maybe 2011, 12, they started to come back, but everyone was like, shh, let's not let everyone. In the last 5 years, I mean, it's been like there's no bashfulness on the part of Wall Street traders and how much they're making, what's going on Wall Street. So it looks like all the lessons that were learned in 2008 have pretty much gone straight out the window, and it's back to business as usual.
Yeah, I know in the parody video you were sort of encouraging GameStop investors to hold the line and keep their shareholdings, but Is it right for them to maybe potentially sell off half of the earnings they've made and then keep the rest?
Well, the video was a joke. I mean, obviously, it wasn't about GameStop. I mean, when I released the video, GameStop had already gone down like 200 points. It was more to make them feel good about everything. But in the caption, I said one important quote. I said, remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. It's an old Wall Street saying. So please be careful. So that's, again, my message is be careful. I'm not advising anyone to buy or sell anything. And just, I never bought or sold any shares of the stock myself because I thought it would not be ethical or in my best interest or anyone else's. So I stayed out of it and was an interesting observer. And I'm rooting for the little guy, though, for sure.
And do you think the little guys are now looking at other targets in the American market to potentially drive up prices?
They most certainly are, and I have no doubt that the hedge funds are also looking just as carefully, saying, where else am I exposed? In other words, I think people keep asking me, do you think regulation will come in and change this? I strongly doubt the SEC will get around to anything that will make a difference. What's going to happen, I believe, and you're probably already seeing it happen, is that Wall Street and large funds, they're very good at closing these gaps and these loopholes. So I think you'll see them being very careful about what stocks they get short and not allowing themselves to be put in a position where a bunch of retail investors can so-called squeeze them and they find themselves on the very wrong side of what was then a bubble on the high side.
Is it fair to say that it's really the GameStop story's really dominated American media over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's been everywhere. And I think because there's this genuine hatred in America for Wall Street. And I think a lot of people really feel like a lot of stuff has happened that's not right. And, they go back to 2008. No one went to jail in that case. So they say, why is this being allowed to happen? It just seems like the same old story again and again. So it's fascinating when you see the tables turned on the bigger investors. So it's dominated the news cycle here for sure. It's maybe starting to return to normal, but I'll tell you, I don't think it's over yet, just so you know. I think there's going to be another squeeze here coming in the next week or so in either GameStop or somewhere else. I don't think it's fully sorted itself out yet. And if you look at charts, there was something similar happened in Volkswagen many years ago. There's like this big spike up, and then some people cover, you think it's over, and all of a sudden it happens again. So it ain't over, as they say, until it's over.
Well, Jordan, that's all I wanted to ask you about GameStop. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.